Good afternoon. Master Williams here with Dragonfly Martial Arts. Just wanted to take a second today and go through some of the fundamental sword techniques that we've been practicing on this cycle. That way you guys have some video to kind of follow along with it. So let's take a look. We're just going to jump right into it. The first thing we want to address is how to hold the sword, right? So if I have the sword here in my hand, I want my right hand to be up on top. My left hand goes on the bottom with some space between the swords. I don't want my hands up close to each other. All right, so this is kind of the grip right below where the guard is to protect you. Holding the sword, you want to hold the sword pointing it at your target. Right out in front of you, about where your belly button is where the tip of that is at. You want your right leg in front, left leg in the back, holding the sword like this. Again, arms not slightly, but out and straight. So if I was pointing it straight ahead, or if you were looking at it from a side point of view, you have an idea of how to hold that sword. Now when I get ready to do a cut, I would bring the sword up, cut down, slicing with that sword. So let's take a look at the first section of cuts. This is our 8 count, so it goes through all of the 8 basic cuts with the sword. I'll do it once facing you, and then I'll turn around and also do it. So if you want to follow along with it, you have that video. So holding the sword here, I'm in my sword stance. Right leg is in front. What I'm going to do first is I'm going to cut to my left, so the sword's going to come up. When I do that, often we're having the students bring their feet together just for continuity. We're going to step back and cut shoulder to hip. Stepping back up. Other side, 2. Stepping back up. Now we're going to go to the left again, but this time we're going to bring the sword flat, cutting across, stepping to the left. 3. Bringing the sword back up, bringing it to the left-hand side, cutting to the right. 4. Bringing it back to the center, taking the sword down so that we can now come up. Stepping forward to the left. Stepping back, dropping it back down here into 6. Stepping back. Now we're going to step forward with our right leg and cut down. 7. And then we're going to stab, turning the sword sideways. 8. So we have our 8 count. Now I'm going to turn around and do it real quick so you can just follow along. Sword is in my hands. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. That is our basic 8 count. Now, when we get ready to put the sword away, we practice this at the very beginning. We're going to take the sword up, clean the sword, thumb goes in the belt, hands here, sliding down, then it's going to slide into my belt, just like so. So that's how I'm going to have my sword put away so that I can bow. So that is our basic 8 count and holding of the sword. Next, we're going to take a look at the kata that we've been practicing, so the actual first form. It's a combination of some fundamental techniques with some other cool moves kind of added into it to give the students some fundamental stuff to practice with. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to step back a little bit so you can see I'm going to be moving forward. Feet are together, bow. We're going to step backwards and do a low block, stepping back with our left leg here, right? So then we're going to take our hand up in a big circular motion, grabbing the sword. When I grab the sword here, I turn the sword sideways so that I can grab it correctly with my fingers along the top part of this blade here. So from here, I'm going to pull the sword out, cutting flat across in front of my body. Then I'm going to take a step forward with my back leg, bringing the sword above my head, scarf cutting shoulder to hip here. The next movement, we're going to practice blocking. So we want to block with the sword above our head in this angle position, step back, scarf cut as a counter. We're going to step forward, block again, going into our next combination. So we're going to block, then we're going to take the end of the sword here, so I'm going to switch my hands, and I'm going to hit the opponent here in the stomach, then stab the opponent behind me, turning back to the front and scarfing to the left, finishing off that opponent that we hit in the gut. Back to our fighting stance here. Now we're going into the triangle cut. So the triangle cut is actually what it is. I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, making a triangle. So from here, I'm going to step to the left, And my feet are now gonna go into a line, right? So I don't have my leg back, my feet are in a line now, and I'm gonna scarf cut to the left, turning into a front stance, flip the sword, then we're gonna cut flat back across by turning our hips and moving our body into our front stance facing the other direction. Then we flip the sword, we're gonna rotate our stance back the other way, cutting in a scarf cut in a rising position. So that's our triangle cut. After the triangle cut, we have our sword in this up position. My opponent is going to be back over here behind me, so I'm going to drop the sword down in front of me and do a reverse scarf up, step forward, another cut up, step forward, and then a downward cut, just like so. Now we're going to go back to the person behind us. So we're going to flip the sword, grabbing the sword like this. So we were here, we're making an adjustment on the sword here, stabbing someone behind us. After we stab, we're going to step behind and do a side kick and push that person off of the sword. And we're holding our sword like this. This is a little bit different, kind of something fun to do with the sword. We're going to step forward now, and we're going to cut back this direction, cutting across flat. Boom. From here, we're going to finish the sword form by going back to the front, bringing the sword up, switching the grip, going back to our normal grip, turning back to the front, and doing a scarf cut. Now that actual movement is all done in one motion. So I apologize, the camera shut off there for a second. So we're going to take a look at this one motion. So here I am in one motion, grabbing the sword, jumping, and finishing with that awesome scarf cut, landing in my stance. So the next thing we're going to do is I'm going to turn around and do the sword form so that you can take a look at it from the rear view, and that way you can practice along with it at home. So standing here, bowing, hand comes up, grab the sword, flat cut one, step forward, scarf cut, step forward, block, step backwards, scarf cut, step forward, block a second time, hitting the person with the end of the sword, stabbing back behind you, scarf cut back to the front. From here we go to our stance. We're going to step to the left. 1, 2, 3, finishing the triangle cut, turning back towards this direction, cut up 1, 2, step forward, cutting down. Flipping the sword, stabbing behind us, side kick, cut, switching the sword, jump in our scarf cut. Back to our stance, clean the sword, put the sword away, and bow. So that is our sword form. Hopefully this will give you some techniques that you can practice while you're at home. So I'm going to